Hi and welcome to the HR and CQ show. Today we're going to talk about the manager squeeze. We're talking about why the people in the middle are feeling like they're breaking. They're feeling like they're being squeezed left, right and centre, and maybe they just don't have much more to give. And Gallup's 2026 data shows that managers' engagement is declining at nearly 3 times the rate of employee engagement. So before we unpack that, let's hear from Sarah about what she's seeing and hearing from managers in the network.
So this is, it sounds like a lot of like bump really, doesn't it? I mean, you know, just picking up this phrase, the manager squeeze. And it's basically, as you say, managers being squeezed from all angles. So maybe they are overworked, they feel like they're underpaid, or they're not given enough benefits to support. It could be that they have role ambiguity, they don't have a job description, or that job description doesn't match the reality. That they keep being given extra tasks to do, extra hours. They don't really understand what's happening in the business maybe, so a lot of or lack of visibility, I guess, on what's happening in the business itself, and the vision for the business is what's happening. So this is what's squeezing people to disengage from their employment, from their companies, at a higher rate than employees are.
Yeah, so often we're thinking that managers are struggling because of the workload, but actually what you're saying is, or what the research is also pointing towards,
it's not just me,
is that it's more about role ambiguity, a lack of support, and being responsible for outcomes that they have no authority over. And I think that that's something that we see a lot here. We were talking off camera about situations where we've heard leaders or maybe middle managers talking about their lack of visibility. Maybe an organisation has business objectives, but it doesn't have, or it doesn't allow the middle managers to actually have visibility of those.
Yeah, it's something that's very common. There is a regional or cultural behaviour, and it's a business cultural behaviour as opposed to an individual cultural behaviour of not sharing information. So they don't feel that, and it's something that I have conversations with multiple business owners, that they don't feel they should be sharing the whys and wherefores of a business with the general team members. However, in my experience, the more transparent you can be, the better relationship that you build, the trust and respect sort of element of that relationship goes up, and the support, the care and support, because people feel that they're being trusted and respected as part of the team, and will say, okay, I want to support you and have a vested interest in a company doing well. So even if you're not doing well, share the information. There's nothing, it's not a sign of failure or incompetence or whatever. It's just a factual, this is where we are, this is what we're doing or we're not doing. And that can go a long way to helping managers feel more engaged in the business and more part of what the business is trying to achieve. It's like telling somebody to play football but not telling them where the goalposts are. Yeah. Right, as a really clear analogy on that one. And that's really important for people to understand. Where am I supposed to be aiming?
Well, yeah, I've heard it described as a football team where you tell only half the team what the team tactics are going to be, but you haven't told the other half.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, we're not able to work then as a team because only half of us have the knowledge of what's expected of us. And I've seen situations before where you might have like a sales team, and the C-suite know what are the targets that we're working towards, and maybe the tier down of sales leaders know what those targets look like, but then the more local middle managers don't have that visibility or understanding of what is the number, what are we trying to achieve, and how would that even translate into something much smaller and obtainable and achievable as a daily target? This is what we're expecting of you on a daily basis, and if we hit that number, we will get our organisation's business objectives.
As one of my ex-managers used to say, how would you eat an elephant? And it's that analogy, absolutely, of one forkful at a time. not start at the trunk, as many answer. You don't start at the tail end for obvious reasons. But it is one forkful at a time. So it's breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces because, an elephant is not a small animal. And being able to achieve it at small bite-sized pieces helps the overall target to be achieved. So I completely agree with you in that respect. One of the other things as well that we've been talking about a little bit off camera was the whole structure around autonomy and hierarchy and decision making within businesses, because it's common, and we've alluded to this in other episodes. We're both obviously from a Western culture, and we're taught to manage up and to challenge our bosses and to use our initiative and allowed to take autonomy in decision making within a framework at least. And 9 times out of 10, I've even had it said to me in complaint handling situations, even if you do a wrong thing, I'll stand by your decision and I'll tell you off afterwards, which my boss has had, because you're handling a complaint and that's fine, we'll just figure out what went wrong and why. Whereas over here, people have a real resistance to that type of situation, but they're being held accountable. If we look at that complaint situation, a middle manager might be held accountable because a complaint wasn't handled properly or because a complaint came in at all, and then yet they're not allowed to take their own initiative, have autonomy to make a decision. How does that play out from a cultural intelligence perspective in the workplace?
Yeah, so you're right in what you're saying, that some people come from a more collaborative or flatter culture, or egalitarianism is the fancy word for it. But basically that just means that people that come from that kind of culture, as you've described, which is where you and I come from, we feel the freedom to speak up, we feel the freedom to challenge upwards. And so, if we were middle managers being squeezed, we would speak up and say, hey, this is the situations and scenarios that I'm facing. I need more support in this area. You haven't given me this data. And we would kind of ask for that information. Whereas people that come from cultures that are more authority orientated or more hierarchically orientated wouldn't feel the freedom to ask for that information or maybe that support, because they wouldn't want to be seen to be disrespecting or dishonouring of the person that's managing them or the senior leadership. And so they may remain quiet on that, and they might have this kind of say yes, but actually the answer is no, because they don't feel the freedom to say no when additional things are being given to them, and there's too much ambiguity about, well, what is my job? You've now given me 10 different tasks. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where you want me to focus my priorities, but I don't dare ask you because it might be disrespectful or it might be perceived as incompetent on my part if I have to ask too many questions.
And it's, a lot of what we're talking about here could be alluded to senior leadership roles, right? But it's not just that. For me, it's also talking about people who are in supervisory level positions, junior management level positions. And we're talking about maybe you don't have the information or you don't have the data, but it could also be a simple thing of I don't have the tools or the equipment for a specific task. I think of it, examples of individuals working in an engineering or a maintenance situation where they're being told, well, you've got to fix this hole in the wall, but they're not being given the right equipment to be able to do it. So they make do with what they've got, which, from my experience of people repairing things in rental properties that I've been in, can be tissue paper and grouting and things like this. It's like, that's not going to fix it. But if they're not given the right tools by their boss, they're not going to be able to do it, but they're also not going to be in a position necessarily to ask for it. And that's something that is important. And a lot of the time that in recent weeks and months, I've had quite a lot of conversations with employees as well as employers because of situations that have occurred. And I'm having to be mindful myself that I'm sitting there going, yes, but you should be saying this, because that's my nature, rather than okay, and I have to stop myself and pull myself back, because I could give that advice to someone, but they're not going to act on it because of their personal culture, and not wanting to stand up to the authority figure that's communicating with them about their final settlement or whatever. So I think one of the things that we need to think about as well with the structure and the hierarchy here is that because we have such a diverse population, and we have such a diverse population with different impact, it's sort of thinking about this question, and I apologise, I'm going to be a bit rambly, but thinking about this question, it crossed my mind that in the UK we probably have almost 200 nationalities as well, right?
Yes.
We don't seem to face the same challenges of that cultural element as much as we do here. And my perception of that is because, generally speaking, because we're British, we technically kind of force people to follow our rule in the UK. They kind of ameliorate or morph into the UK cultural behaviours because that's the stronger one. Whereas here there are quite defined pillars of culture because of the volume of those nationalities here. There's a little bit more of a nationality or cultural networking here. And that then is what replays in businesses. So you can have a manager of one single culture, and I can speak from experience of being in this situation, I'm sure you have the same, of where I'm the only Westerner in an environment and I'm surrounded by lots of fabulous people from lots of fabulous different cultures, but if I'm trying to manage down and manage up and I'm the only person managing in a certain way, it can pose very specific challenges. What hints and tips do you have that you can give to people to sort of overcome that?
So I think to kind of touch on what you were saying there, in the UK, we probably do have the variety of different nationalities, as you've mentioned, but there is a dominant culture because probably, I wouldn't know the numbers, but say 80% of the people are British, and then the rest of the population is made up of the other nationalities. And so, yes, there's that nationality diversity there, but at a much smaller amount. Whereas I think here in the UAE, we've got around 10 or 11% Emirati population, but then the other 90 or so percent is expats from all over. Again, not one dominant culture, but from all different places. So there's a much greater level of diversity. So in terms of how it would have been handled in the UK, there would be this dominant British culture of this is the way that we do things. Here, we don't. That's the reason why we don't see that. But here we have, even though people come from so many different countries, and there is that diversity, there is to some extent some commonality in terms of, are most of the population here direct or indirect in the way that they communicate? Are most of the population here more flexibly orientated with their time or more structured? And so even though people come from different nationalities, there is this commonality, like, for example, 70% of the population here are relationship orientated. So it means when we think about how do we build trust in the workplace, it's based on what do I know about you as an individual person? Are you likable? And therefore, can I trust you? And am I wanting to be loyal to you as an employee? Whereas in other cultures, it's built around your credibility, like what does your CV say, what qualifications have you got, what other projects did you work on, could you deliver them well, and based on that I'll decide that I can trust you. So there's that commonality here of 70% of people being relationship orientated, and so we come from different countries, but we are still all the same. Well, we're not all the same, but like I'm saying, 70% are the same. Yeah. So in terms of helpful tips, if I was a middle leader with the pressure of having to manage culturally diverse employees in my team, and then maybe cross-cultural relationship between me and the person above me, because we come from different cultures, I would say start to recognise, firstly, your own behavioural traits from a cultural perspective, and how do they then differ from your colleagues? Where are you seeing the most friction and challenge, and what is causing those challenges? And back to that conversation we were having in the previous episode where we were saying, it's about having that level of curiosity in your perspective. So having curiosity to say, why is this person responding in the way that they are, and how can I make sure that I navigate this interaction in a way that's more successful, and how am I prepared to flex and adapt my approach to that interaction? So what should HR actually be doing differently then? If we're trying to protect our managers and trying to avoid them feeling that squeeze of that role ambiguity, that lack of support that we've been talking about, what should HR be doing next then?
So for me, and this is something that I support companies with on a project basis, basically, because sometimes when you are the HR person in the team, it's difficult to see the woods for the trees. Like, it's difficult to get an outside perspective. So bringing someone in to look at this and support you with it. Some things are very easy for you to do yourselves, absolutely. Things like improving the communication. So making sure that the communication that you're providing to the team members is clear, it's consistent, it is the right communication. So you're giving them the information that they need to be able to do their work, and that you're giving them the tools that they need. So the tools for me is not about giving them a paintbrush or a spanner, it's necessarily, but it's about giving them the opportunity to be able to speak up and having tools and ways that are culturally intelligent, so facilitating the different cultural nuances so that they can raise their voice and say, I'm happy, I'm not happy, okay? And ask for help, ask for support, ask for guidance. The more external things that you can do, or the things that are possibly a little bit more challenging to do as an internal person, is taking an objective view of your organisation design and structure, looking at the business, especially with the current situation that we're in, which we talked about a little bit with the Bani and Vuko conversation in our last, well, we talked a lot actually, in our last episode, is there's been a lot of change. Some companies have lost a lot of headcount. Some companies have lost a lot of business, so they've had to pivot and change what their product is or their offering and services. So what was working might not continue to be working. It might need to be adapted and adjusted to meet the new demands of the business. And that is, it's very easy to do on the fly and to do this quickly, but to take a more strategic and objective long-term view of it and understand and analyse and do a little bit more of like a job architecture, understand exactly where roles have changed. Do we need to reassess and readdress job descriptions, responsibilities, maybe looking at authority matrices, things like this, so to understand that people are being given the opportunity to make decisions and be autonomous where possible. Those type of actions can be relatively easily taken within a business. What else can I think of?
Well, I was going to say, and then all of the things that you've just mentioned might mean that if you've got HR leaders who themselves are feeling squeezed, then everything you've just said might
apply to them as well.
Well, it might feel super overwhelming. It's just like, I'm already being squeezed as it is, and now, Sarah, you're saying to me that I should be doing all of these other things as well. Like, I just literally don't have the support that I need to do that, and I don't have there's too much ambiguity around what I'm doing for me to then start focusing on all of these other things. And that's where it's perfect for organisations to be thinking about how they can bring somebody like yourself into the organisation who can deliver that piece of work for them. You will build out that HR strategy so that you're going to give them a specific roadmap of these are the things that you need to be doing from a HR perspective to be able to deliver the business objectives you want to deliver, and these are the sequential things that you need to do to make that happen.
And when you've got the independent observations of what's happening in your business, sometimes it's easier to accept it because it's not personal, right?
Yep.
When I come in, I don't, generally speaking, don't know the majority of people that I'm talking to and working around and things. So I can be extremely non-emotional and objective about suggestions and recommendations that are being made. And, you know, it's not that that companies would bring me in to do a whole manpower and like decide how many people we can lose.
Yes, it's not about being callous. It's about
but it's about looking at it objectively and saying, look, I think you're too light in this part of the business, you're too heavy in that part, maybe this person could do that job, and or you've got a vacancy here, I think you need to realign that vacancy, maybe change the job title a little bit, or the role responsibilities to align it more with the direction the business is going. Help develop communication tools, for example. Are you using a great HR system that can support more communication to teams, understanding some of the more reporting lines, like the whistleblowing policy maybe. Do you have one? Is it enforced? Is it in place? Do you have the supporting structures to do that, so that people can actually raise the white flag when they need to and say, okay, I need help with this. So me coming into a business is, it's a very positive step to take, and it does support senior HR leaders. It gives them the opportunity. They can sort of not sit back and relax, but they can, because it's not something else that's on their plate that needs to be done.
Well, or they can just get on with the general day-to-day runnings of the HR function.
And other priorities.
Yeah, and the other priorities, which at the moment I imagine there's a number.
Yes.
So Sarah and I have our own independent consultancies. We offer HR fractional services and also learning and development, strategy build out, and training workshops. So if you've been listening to all of the things that we're saying, you think these two ladies seem to know what they're talking about, and you think that we could help and support your organisation with the things that you're trying to drive and the business objectives that you're working towards, then feel free to get in touch with us, and we'd certainly be happy to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. So I think that brings us to the end of this episode. It's been a really interesting conversation. Again, I think we always have interesting conversations with some very pertinent and practical advice that's been given. Thank you very much to everybody who's been listening. We have our new website up and running, which is HRCQ Edge. The link is in our bio. And we are having new events coming up. So our next event is a breakfast exchange, which is happening in September. Information and details will be on the website, and you'll be able to join. If you buy a ticket for that, you can join the HR and CQ community and get all the good stuff on the inside track there. So we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.